Oh boy, it sure gets tiring having to make ORAS CAP matches every single day. I think I'll go into my fridge and get one of my favorite snacks, cheese. Best used by July 3rd, 2021. Oh fuck, what's today? Oh shit. Oh, we're good. Oh, we're fine. Well, who am I to take a good handful of cheese and make sure that... Well, it's a pretty snack anyway. Oh, this beautiful cheese that's gonna be bad in a day. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Hi everyone, welcome to a video on the competitive nature of ORAS CAP. Now, ORAS CAP, for those of you who don't know, is the Create a Pokemon metagame in Gen 6. So this is the X and Y into ORAS, Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire, Create a Pokemon metagame. Now, one of the biggest things about ORAS CAP is right now we are currently developing it. It's still in the state of development, and it will always be in the state of development. But we managed to get enough resources to where ORAS CAP is now one of the major matches in the CAP Premier League. In fact, it is part of the best of 3 for old gens, as well as its own standalone match. Now, there are some obvious issues that plague ORAS CAP, but in order to discuss these issues, we first need to discuss some problems in ORAS OU. Now, I will be the first to say that I am not an expert on ORAS OU, but I am primarily using resources found on Smogon.com, watching replays of SPL, and reading the thread, The Current State of ORAS OU, posted in the policy review section on Smogon.com. Additionally, speaking from experience building a lot of Gen 6 CAP teams in the past 2 weeks, I feel as though I've noticed some very obvious and glaring issues. But first, why don't we start with ORAS OU, since this will establish some grounding for ORAS CAP. Now, the state of ORAS OU as it stands has a very significant focus on very obvious archetypes. There's Stall, which, is always going to be decently good. But one of the biggest issues is using Shuckle plus Bisharp on webs, and Serperior plus one of these setup sweepers to establish screens. This is Reflect and Light Screen. And Serperior is actually one of the biggest, most abusive offenders of Light Screen and Reflect, because Serperior also gets Glare and Leaf Storm, plus its ability Contrary. This means that Serperior can effectively force through its checks and set up screens at the same time, while punishing anything that wants to set up in its face with Glare. Now, if you're not familiar with ORAS, basically, paralysis in ORAS quarters your speed, as opposed to having it like it does in Gen 8, essentially making any fast Pokemon almost immediately useless. For example, if you're using, say, a Tornadus Therian, you better hope that your Hurricane hits, and you had better hope that that Serperior is at least somewhat chipped, due to the nature of how, if you're using Assault Vest Tornadus Therian, the roll is 88 to 103, or 104. You're essentially risking this Tornadus Therian be paralyzed, effectively ruining a lot of its utility and use in a match because of its normal speed, being at base 121, and hitting 375 speed at max. Typically, this is the speed that will be run, but it's still important to clarify that. But returning to Serperior, Serperior has this awkward speed tier of 113 base speed, giving it a max speed of 357, meaning that it outspeeds a lot of these base 110 Pokemon. Therefore, with the combination of Glare and well-predicted play, leads to a lot of opportunities in which Serperior is able to set up both Light Screen and/or Reflect, which therefore allows it to support another 2 very important Pokemon. These are Manathy and Volcarona. Manathy is pretty straightforward. It typically runs a Tail Glow plus 3 attacks set, usually running Surf and then a combination of either Ice Beam, Energy Ball, or Psychic, depending on what the team needs. It's pretty straightforward because Manathy is a base 100 speed Pokemon, meaning it hits 328 speed and will outspeed a good portion of the meta. However, not all of it if it's running a modest nature, which means it's only hitting about 299 speed. Now this is crucial because modest Manathy hits harder than you falling off your bike after riding down the hill for about 30 seconds at max speed. It hits hard and will break through your team if you're not careful. And with screens up, with base 100 bulk across the board, Manathy won't go down from a single hit from basically anything. Yes, I know this is hyperbolic. And if Manathy gets to +3 special attack with Tail Glow, it's going to be doing damage to your team no matter what, especially if it's behind screens, since it'll get the opportunity to set up and likely get at least one attack off before it goes down. That is, if you can chip it. Bulkarona is a similar case study. Volcarona also has base 100 speed, but unlike Manathy, Volcarona boosts with Quiver Dance, which boosts your special attack, special defense, and speed by 1. At 492 speed, which is when Volcarona is at +1, it's outspeeding basically anything. And with Quiver Dance boosting Volcarona's special defense as well, at base 105, Volcarona is going to be living most special-based hits. Physical hits are a bit of a different story, but again, if Reflect is up, that gives longevity to the bug. Now obviously, setting up screens does not mean that you immediately win. If we look at SPL replays, we can see that while screens are relevant and present, they are not the defining feature of who wins and who loses their matches. Now, that's fine and all, but we're not here to talk about SPL. We're here to talk about ORAS CAP, which means that we have to consider a couple more threats that exist in the CAP metagame that really impact how different CAP is from regular ORAS OU. See, with CAP, there are a few more Pokemon that really benefit from having screens up. The elephant in the room is probably the most effective CAP that's in the metagame right now. Illusion Oramoth and Commodore are both effectively banned from ORAS CAP, so the next best CAP is Mega Crucible. Crucible is one of those Pokemon that was designed to have a Mega form. Now, Vanilla Crucible hits base 104 speed, so with a Jolly nature that's going to be hitting 337 speed, meaning that with the ORAS mechanics, when it Mega evolves, the first turn it has will be at that speed. However, upon Mega evolving, Mega Crucible gets 10 more points to its base speed, making its overall max speed 359, which is 2 points faster than Serperior. Additionally, it has the bulk of 106 HP, 75 defense, and 125 special defense, meaning that, even without screens, a special attack is not necessarily going to knock it out. And with screens up, Mega Crucible can do whatever it wants with Magic Guard by dropping head smashes, gunk shots, and even setting up with Coil if the set provides it. The next menace that CAP has to offer is a pillow fighting Pokemon named Kerfluffle. Now, Kerfluffle is a fairy fighting type that has access to a variety of moves, such as Moonblast, Focus Blast, Sludge Bomb, Parting Shot, and Hidden Power, as well as the ability Natural Cure, meaning that it can absorb glares from Serperior as needed for the team, and then pivot out using Parting Shot. Now, this might be alright on a Pokemon with, say, base 100 speed, but Kerfluffle has base 119 speed, meaning that at a max speed, it's hitting 370, and its special attack is base 115, meaning that it hits fast and hard. We can return back to the example of Tornadus Therian being base 121 speed to effectively check Kerfluffle in ORAS CAP. This is why, if Tornadus Therian gets glared, Kerfluffle becomes that much harder to deal with. If you need proof, you can look at the ORAS CAP Spotlight Tour stats to see that Kerfluffle has an astonishing win rate of 73%. Ultimately, this does boil down to how it's played, and it's not always going to be used on screens. However, Kerfluffle works exceptionally well in conjunction with screens in order to pivot, break holes in teams, and allowing screen sweepers to effectively clean up much more nicely, as well as benefiting from screens itself. Lastly, let's discuss one Pokemon that benefits from having screens up and the opponent wanting screens down: Bisharp. Now, Bisharp, for those who don't know, has the ability Defiant, which raises its attack by 2 when one of its stats is lowered. And coincidentally enough, the most common form of hazard removal in ORAS CAP is Defog, which lowers the target's evasion by 1 step. So, when Bisharp's evasion is lowered, its attack is raised by 2, sharply raising its attack when the opponent attempts to clear screens with Defog. For reference too, these screens can't be removed with Rapid Spin, and Rapid Spin in ORAS CAP is really only used by Excadrill and Starmie, the latter of which is hardly ever seen in tournament play. Therefore, Bisharp is an invaluable teammate to screens teams because of its ability to deter opponents from using Defog, while also providing counterplay against the opponent's sticky webs, for example. And when paired with Black Glasses or a Life Orb, a +2 Sucker Punch from Bisharp makes for incredibly difficult mind games in addition to a really powerful form of speed control. All of this rambling is to say that screens in ORAS CAP are by far the best way to play. This fact stems from Mega Crucible and Kerfluffle being as potent powerhouses as they are, in addition to the various other powerhouses that already exist in ORAS OU that were previously mentioned. This is coupled by the fact that there is minimal counterplay to dealing with screens teams due to the item Light Clay. Compare Light Screen and Reflect to the move Sticky Web. Sticky Web acts as an entry hazard similar to Stealth Rock or Spikes. However, it lowers the target's speed by 1 upon switching in contrast to doing damage. The difference between Light Screen and Reflect to Sticky Web is that Sticky Web is more easily managed, either by using Bisharp, who gets a Defiant boost, or by clearing it with Rapid Spin. Light Screen and Reflect, in contrast, do not have that secondary form of management. They have to be cleared by Defog, or be broken by unviable moves like Brick Break. Additionally, a speed drop is much more easy to play around versus having to deal with the opponent's bulk. You are ultimately in control of your speed, but your opponent is in control of their bulk. For example, if you have a Volcarona whose speed is dropped by 1, all it takes is a couple quiver dances to get back to where you were, while still gaining a power output. Furthermore, screens cannot be mitigated with magic bounce in the way that webs can. Webs are entirely dependent on the opponent's matchup, whereas screens are very self-reliant, and the success of using screens primarily comes from your own use rather than the actions of your opponent. This therefore makes screens far more reliable of use in hyper-offense compared to Sticky Web. But don't get me wrong, Sticky Web is really good, it's just that screens are better, and both are incredibly cheesy. With regards to counterplay for screens, right now there isn't so much, besides not getting overwhelmed by the opponent. There's Infiltrator mons potentially like Volkraken, and there are Pokemon that can, taunt, but a fast taunt is not very common in ORAS CAP right now. Perhaps we'll see it more with Capel, and as we go from there, yeah, I did call it Capel, what are you gonna do about it? Ultimately, I do think that webs and screens on hyper offense are sort of problematic, simply due to the fact that they are so dominant in this metagame. Am I calling for a ban on Light Clay and Sticky Web? No, not necessarily. I just think it's worth bringing attention to this issue. Now, I wouldn't have a problem with this if it weren't the dominant strategy in ORAS CAP right now. You can bring stall and you can bring balance, but the issue is that the dominant strategy is ultimately a cheesy one. So, that's my take on it. And yes, cheese is subjective. Otherwise, that's about it for this. I just wanted to bring light to screens and how they are relevant in ORAS CAP. Thanks for watching, and I guess have fun playing. Bring screens, I guess. Use Manathy. It's really good.